Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Tuesday Talks with Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium. We are down here in the Florida Keys at our International Center for Coral Reef Research and Restoration. Obviously not at the lab because we are practicing social distancing. My name is Haley and I am the event coordinator down here. Today, we will be interviewing Samantha Simpson. She is a staff biologist for our Coral Reef Monitoring and Assessment Program. We gathered all of our questions from our users on our Google Classroom platform. So if you have not joined that platform yet, please do. We put out education content on that platform all the time. So let's get to it.
Hi, my name is Samantha Simpson, and I'm a staff biologist in the Coral Reef Monitoring Assessment Program at the Summerlin campus of Mote Marine Lab.
So it looks like from the Google Classroom, Sarah Mates wants to know, she says, does Mote grow the corals in the lab first before they are put in the ocean on their coral trees?
Mote Marine Lab does a little bit of both of that. The in situ lab in particular grows all of its corals within the water, so we just keep aside from the corals that were harvested originally from the wild, we've been working within the corals that we've already harvested to make more and frag those corals. Mm-hmm. So they don't come onto the land to make more corals. A large coral chunk, like a large boulder coral that needs to be cut into smaller sections and then brought back out into the water to be grown.
And then the second part of her question was, she says that she's heard that some places breed the coral to better survive in a more acidic environment in order to help the corals deal with ocean acidification, and she wants to know if Mote does this at the lab as well.
Yes, that is happening here. We have an ocean acidification lab, a disease lab, and a coral reproduction lab, and all of those labs kind of work together with information from the monitoring lab that sees what corals are surviving, what corals are doing better, and then we can report that to other labs like the ocean acidification and disease labs, where they can experiment on those corals and kind of stress them out, see if observations that we may have made are correct and how they do in a lab setting with that, and then take what they learn and pass it along to the reproduction lab, which can then try to target those corals and breed them and see if it is true that their offspring get those traits and survive better. So then we can go ahead and take them back out and outplant them, frag more of them, and make more corals to try to replenish the reefs.
Nice, that's awesome. Alrighty, question number 2 says, can you only plant corals during certain times of the year?
Theoretically speaking, you can plant corals year-round.
Okay.
However, there are times when there's bleaching going on, and you wouldn't want to outplant corals when there's a bleaching event because that adds extra stress, and the coral would be having more stresses on it and not a good chance of it surviving. The same goes for when the weather is too cold. If the water temperatures are colder than the corals are adjusted to, it can be stress for them to move and be outplanted in those conditions. However, sometimes this doesn't happen. For example, in the year 2019, we were able to outplant year-round without a problem. The method that we use to outplant has proven a lot of success, that we're able to outplant in all sorts of conditions, be it strong winds and waves.
Now, you guys cable tie the coral to the railroad spike on the reef, right?
Right, yes, we do that.
Do you ever have them come off, or do you guys have them pretty set in that way?
Right. No cable ties are lost. We do it like that. I have one right here to show you.
I love that.
Yeah. The cable tie will go around the coral and the nail, and what will happen sometimes is the coral will come loose. It can wiggle around sometimes if the cable tie, for whatever reason, wasn't on tight enough. And that cable tie is negatively buoyant, so it'll usually end up sliding down and being around the base, or maybe it doesn't come off entirely, but it's just kind of wiggling around. So what we do then is we go around and on our 1 month monitoring, we'll bring new cable ties And if we notice any are missing or like are missing from being attached to the coral and are around the base of the railroad tide, we'll cut that and we'll take it back with us onto the boat and put a new cable tie on.
Okay.
Everyone.
Someone wants to know, I guess their username is just their initials, but they are asking, how do you feed the polyps?
Right. So in the in situ lab, aka the lab offshore that I grow coral in, we actually don't feed the coral. I know, so mean, right? No, they get all of their like nutrients from either the photosynthesizing zooxanthellae within their tissue or anything that's drifting by in the water. We don't go around and feed the coral by any sort of means.
And they also want to know how big a polyp is.
So the polyps that we work with for the branching corals, like the elkhorn and the staghorn, to compare it to like a household item, maybe I would say it's like the tip of a Sharpie. If I have a coral next to me right here, if you can kind of see this that I'm holding up to the screen.
Perfect.
See these little spikes right here?
Yes.
A polyp lives within one of those little spikes. So maybe if you can look into the inside of it, that's how big a polyp would be.
So another one of our students from our Google Classroom was wondering how long it takes for a coral fragment to grow until it's ready to be put on the reef.
Right. So if we're talking about starting out with a coral fragment, typically we have those to start from about 5 centimeters. And if we put that on the tree and had it grow, in about 6 to 9 months, you'd end up with a coral that's about 25 centimeters in total linear extension. And that's something that we would consider ready to go out to the reef.
What is the percentage of corals that successfully adapt to their new environment once they have been outplanted onto the reef?
Right. So we experience a pretty good survival rate of about 95% at the 1 month monitoring. What that means is that when we go back and we look at all of the sites that we've put corals onto, 95% of the corals that we monitor are still alive and are, I guess you could say, adapting to their environment.
So Eve Melody on our Google Classroom, she says, or she's asking, what factors go into deciding where you grow your coral trees? And then she asks, do you scout the area for coral borers?
So there are a lot of things that go into choosing where you're going to put a coral nursery.
Mm-hmm.
It took a lot of thought to plan where our Lukey nursery was going to be. The things that we look at, though, aren't per se whether or not there's predators in the area or CCA. It's actually proximity to like historically large populations of coral. So let's say we know that there used to be a whole bunch of staghorn coral in this specific area. We would want to put our coral nursery near that because we know that in the past it's been a place where coral has been able to thrive and survive. Mm-hmm. Some other conditions that we want to look for is we want the nursery to be in clearer water. So coral typically like clearer, oligotrophic, which means poor nutrient water. So we wouldn't want to move it near to shore. We'd want it a little bit offshore. But our nurseries, both our Sand Key and Lukey, are in about 27 to 30 feet of water. Okay. And that's so that the corals have enough room to be sheltered and kind of like at a depth where temperature, if it gets too hot, won't affect them. Boats shouldn't run them over, that type of deal. However, it's not too deep for our divers to be down there. We can work in the nursery all day and not experience any kind of decompression sickness or anything like that.
Which is ideal.
Ideal. Yeah, what we're really looking for there is close proximity to healthy reefs, sandy bottom type, and that good depth right there.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. So what do you guys do when you have kelp, seaweed, or algae invade the area of your coral trees and prevent the sunlight from reaching the coral?
Right. So we don't experience a lot of the kelp that you might envision in the Pacific, where you have these forests and things like that. So typically, the algae that, if it ends up in the area, it won't block the coral sunlight to the point where it's detrimental.
Hmm.
You occasionally have some sargassum that'll come through, or other drifting algae that may get entangled in the tree. It's not normally a huge problem. Sometimes you just pull it off and then it's done. Luckily, the advantage for using these coral trees is that there's not really that much surface area for algae to attach to. The only way it could grow is if it was on the branches of the coral tree or the trunk, but we clean them every once in a while. So it never really gets unmanageable or to the point where it's preventing the coral from growing and getting sunlight.
So another question from our Google Classroom is from our classmate Paige, and she wants to know if polyps require different salinity than the adults.
Say they don't. So when we're talking about a polyp here, it depends on whether you're talking about a recruit, which is the initial polyp that then buds and grows into the coral colony, in which case we wouldn't have one of those out in the in situ lab offshore. That would be more something that got settled on land and then was brought out once it was large enough. So the corals that we have and are growing within the offshore nursery are going to be corals that are larger. You know, they don't ever get smaller than 5 centimeters of a frag. And
Mhm.
those corals, they stay in the salinity of the offshore coral nursery, which is regulated by Mother Ocean herself.
Okay, everyone, that is it for today. Thank you, Sam, for joining us. I hope you had a good time.
Always a good time when there's coral.
Yay! Yes, definitely. Okay, we're gonna go, and we hope to see you guys next time. Make sure to follow our social channels. We have Facebook and Instagram, and then also join our Google Classroom where you can see more content like this. Hey guys, that is it for today. I hope that you enjoyed this content. If you want to have the whole, full, detailed education content, you can find us on our Google Classroom. We're on Facebook and Instagram. If you are a Florida resident and you would like to support our Coral Lab down in the Florida Keys, you can purchase a Protect Our Reefs license plate. MoteReefPlate.com is the website where you can find more info. The money comes back to us, the $25 it costs to buy this, and we use half of it for our coral restoration and research efforts, and then we give the other half out in grant money. Until next time, stay safe and stay healthy. We'll see you guys.